The moon of Cora 3 was a desolate, forgotten place, covered with dust and rocky hills. There were no trees, no rivers, just endless dry land and sharp mountains. The stars above looked cold and distant, as if they were watching a forgotten world. And on this lonely moon, a ship had crashed, its twisted metal half buried in the sand. Leo Vargas stood near the wreckage, looking at the destroyed starship. He was covered in dirt, his clothes torn from the crash, but his hands were steady as he worked. Leo was a mechanic by trade, and fixing broken things was what he knew best. But this wasn't just a normal ship repair. This was the wreckage of a ship that had crashed far from civilization. He had no idea if anyone would come to rescue him. He had no idea how long it would take. The crew was gone. Most of them had died in the explosion when the ship hit the ground. Leo was the only human left, the only one who had survived the crash. But there was one other survivor, something that shouldn't have been alive. Lying nearby on the ground in a strange, twisted position was a massive creature. Its scales shimmered in the faint light of the moon, glowing a deep purple with hints of blue. Its wings were enormous, each one wide enough to block out the stars, but the creature was not moving. The alien dragon was injured, its wings broken, and its massive body barely able to move. Leo had never seen anything like it before. The creature was huge, bigger than any wild animal he had ever heard of. Yet there was something almost peaceful in the way it lay there, as if it was waiting for something. Leo knew he had to help it. He didn't know why he felt this way. The creature could be dangerous, but it was also hurt. He couldn't just leave it to die. As Leo walked cautiously toward the dragon, he noticed that it had dark green eyes, glowing with intelligence, and a strange power behind them. The dragon's chest rose and fell slowly, its breathing shallow. It was alive, but barely. He knelt down beside it, careful not to get too close. "Hey there," Leo said softly, unsure if the creature could understand him. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'll help you." The dragon's eyes flickered, and for a moment Leo thought it might be able to speak. But it didn't. Instead, a strange feeling filled his mind, a sense of deep emotion. Something like pain, regret, and a hint of fear. The feeling was so strong it made Leo pause. He realized the creature wasn't just hurt physically. It was struggling inside, emotionally. "Don't worry," Leo whispered again, his voice steady. "I'll get you back on your feet. Just give me time." The dragon made a soft sound, almost like a sigh, and then went still again. Leo took a deep breath and stood up. He couldn't fix everything at once, but he could do something. He needed to find tools, gather supplies, and figure out how to care for this creature while also trying to repair the damaged ship. But the ship wasn't his first priority anymore. He couldn't just leave the dragon to suffer. Leo made his way back to the wreckage. The ship's engine had been destroyed, and the communication systems were offline. There was little hope of anyone hearing a distress signal, but Leo couldn't just give up. He had to try, but first he needed to make sure the dragon was okay. Back at the crash site, Leo found an old medical kit that had been tossed during the crash. It was a little battered, but most of the contents were still usable. He returned to the dragon and started checking its wounds. He carefully bandaged the dragon's broken wings, using everything he could find. The creature flinched, but it didn't attack. Leo guessed it was too weak to fight back. As he worked, the creature's eyes followed him. He didn't know if the dragon understood him, but it felt like it was trying to communicate, not in words, but in feelings. It was like a strange connection, one that Leo couldn't explain. For a moment he wondered if he was imagining it, but the longer he stayed with the dragon, the more real it seemed. He worked through the night, repairing the dragon's injuries as best he could. By the time the sun began to rise, the creature's breathing had steadied. It still couldn't move, but at least it wasn't in immediate danger of dying. Leo sat down beside the dragon, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He had worked hard, and the day had barely begun. The wreckage of the ship still lay ahead of him, waiting for repairs, but Leo had made a promise to himself. He wouldn't abandon the creature. He couldn't. The sun slowly climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the rocky land. Leo took a deep breath, looking at the dragon lying quietly beside him. He wasn't sure what would happen next. Would anyone come? Would he ever leave this desolate moon? But for now, he knew one thing: he would stay. He wasn't alone anymore. Leo watched in disbelief as the new ship descended from the sky, its sleek black body cutting through the thick air of Cora 3. It was different from the war machines that had attacked them. This ship was fast, controlled, and clearly designed for one purpose: military conquest. Its sharp edges and dark reflective surface made it look like a predator, hunting down its prey. Jar, still standing beside Leo, lowered its wings, a low growl vibrating from deep within its chest. The dragon's glowing eyes narrowed, its body tense as it watched the incoming ship. Leo could feel the shift in the air. This was not a rescue mission. This was an attack, and they weren't prepared for it. The new ship touched down, its landing gear making a sharp, grinding sound as it hit the ground. The doors opened, and a group of soldiers stepped out. They wore dark armored suits, their faces hidden behind visors. Their weapons gleamed in the dim light of the moon, and Leo could feel the cold presence of authority in their every move. "Ja'ar, we need to move." "Now," Leo said urgently, his heart racing. He didn't know who these soldiers were, but the way they moved and the look in their eyes made it clear. They weren't here to help. Jar growled again, its powerful body shifting slightly as if ready to take flight. But the dragon wasn't at full strength yet. Leo knew they couldn't outrun this threat, especially not with the war machines still scattered around them. The soldiers spread out in a precise, calculated manner, their eyes scanning the surroundings. Leo could see that they were searching for something. Or someone. "I'll hold them off," Leo said to Jar, though he wasn't sure how. The weapon he had used to disable the first war machine was useless now. There was no time to think. He had to act. Without thinking, Leo ran toward the wreckage of the ship, grabbing a few pieces of scrap metal along the way. He needed to create a distraction, anything to buy Jar enough time to recover and take flight. He had no weapons, no plan, but he knew he couldn't stand there and wait to be captured. Jar's large, luminous eyes followed Leo's every movement, its head turning slowly, as though weighing the human's decision. The dragon understood. The soldiers were getting closer. Leo's heart pounded in his chest, and his breath was coming faster now. The adrenaline coursed through him as he crouched behind the ship's wreckage, trying to hide. He wasn't sure what he was doing, but the fear was overwhelming. He had to buy time, even if it meant risking his life. The soldiers stopped moving, their heads turning toward the wreckage. They had spotted something. One of the soldiers raised his hand, signaling for the others to stop. They were getting too close. Leo knew it was now or never. He had to do something before they reached him. With a deep breath, Leo threw a piece of metal across the moon's surface, hoping to create a loud noise. It worked. The soldiers looked up, distracted for a moment. Leo took that opportunity to dash toward the edge of the wreckage, trying to get behind the larger pieces of debris. He had to keep moving. Jar was watching him, its glowing eyes locked onto Leo's every movement. The dragon was waiting for the right moment. Leo could feel the connection between them, the trust that had been built over the past few weeks. Jar wasn't just a creature of instinct, it had become something more. It was his ally, his companion, and Leo wasn't about to let it fall. As the soldiers advanced, Leo knew he couldn't keep up the distraction for much longer. The ship was too close and the soldiers were too well trained. But then, something unexpected happened. Jar suddenly rose into the air, its wings flapping with strength that surprised Leo. The dragon soared above the wreckage, its massive form cutting through the air like a shadow. The soldiers didn't know what to do. For a moment they froze, unsure of how to respond to the sudden appearance of the powerful creature. Jar wasn't just a beast, it was a force of nature, and it was angry. Leo watched in awe as the dragon flew high, then swooped down, sending a wave of telekinetic force toward the soldiers. The energy from Jar's roar was enough to send the soldiers scrambling, their weapons firing into the air, but they couldn't reach the dragon. It was too fast, too powerful. In that moment, Leo knew they had a chance. Jar had given them the opening they needed. The soldiers regrouped, but it was clear they were no match for Jar's strength. Leo, still crouched behind the wreckage, felt the ground shake as the dragon landed, its massive feet hitting the surface with a thunderous sound. Jar's eyes turned to Leo, and for the first time there was a quiet understanding between them. The dragon wasn't just protecting itself, it was protecting Leo too. The soldiers raised their weapons again, aiming at Jar, but Leo rushed forward, his heart racing. He knew he had to do something to stop them before they could fire again. He grabbed a piece of scrap metal from the wreckage and hurled it toward one of the soldiers, hitting him square in the chest. The soldier stumbled backward, his weapon falling from his hand. "Move!" Leo shouted at Jar, his voice hoarse with panic. He didn't know how long they could hold off these soldiers, but they couldn't stay here much longer. They needed to get to the ship, and they needed to get off the moon. Jar roared, a sound that echoed through the empty land and leapt into the air again. This time, the soldiers didn't hesitate. They fired their weapons, but the shots missed. Jar was too quick, too agile. Leo watched, wide-eyed, as the dragon used its power to send blasts of energy at the soldiers, knocking them off their feet. The soldiers had no choice but to retreat, stumbling back as they tried to regroup. But Jar wasn't done. The dragon followed them, its glowing eyes fierce, sending wave after wave of telekinetic energy at the soldiers. They were no match for the power of a creature like Jar. Leo didn't have time to think. He turned back toward the wreckage of the ship, hoping that it could still be salvaged. He had to get the ship ready. He had to escape. Jar landed nearby, its wings folding tightly against its body. The soldiers were retreating, but Leo knew they wouldn't give up easily. They would be back. But for now, they had won. Cliffhanger. Leo looked back at Jar, his heart still racing from the battle. But there was no time to rest. In the distance, another ship appeared on the horizon. This one was different. It was a massive, dark warship, one that seemed to blot out the sky, and it was heading straight toward them. Leo stood still, his heart hammering in his chest as the massive warship appeared on the horizon. It was like a dark shadow creeping across the moon's surface, its enormous size casting a dark pall over everything beneath it. The ship was unlike any he had seen before, its sleek metallic exterior gleaming in the pale light of Cora 3's distant sun. The engines hummed with power as it descended slowly but surely toward the surface. Jar's wings twitched, the dragon's body tense as it watched the ship. The air around them seemed to thicken, the quiet of the moon broken only by the sound of their breath and the rumble of the approaching warship. Leo could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. This was no ordinary ship. The Jarek coalition had come. Not again, Leo muttered under his breath, looking up at the towering form of the ship. There was no way they could fight this one. They had just barely survived the previous wave of enemies. He knew they wouldn't get another chance. Jar let out a low, rumbling growl, the sound vibrating in the ground beneath them. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter now, its body tense, ready for whatever was coming. Leo could feel the silent communication between them, an unspoken understanding of the danger they both faced. The warship landed with a deafening roar, its engines finally cutting off, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The ground beneath Leo and Jar trembled slightly as the massive doors at the base of the ship began to open. Figures appeared in the doorway, soldiers in black armor, their faces hidden behind dark visors, moving in unison with precision and purpose. Leo's stomach tightened. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were elite, trained for combat, and there was no way they would allow Leo and Jar to escape. The first soldier stepped forward, his helmet reflecting the moon's faint light as he looked toward them. His voice, cold and mechanical, echoed in the silence. "Step away from the creature." "You are under arrest," the soldier commanded. Leo didn't move. His eyes flicked from the soldiers to Jar, who stood protectively by his side. The dragon's wings rustled slightly, its body low to the ground, ready for action. Leo could feel the dragon's fear. Jar was still weak, still recovering from the previous battle, but Leo couldn't let them take the dragon. He couldn't. Jar had saved him countless times, and now it was his turn to protect the creature who had become his only companion. He stepped forward, his voice steady, despite the fear he felt. "I'm not going anywhere," Leo said firmly. "If you want the dragon, you'll have to go through me first." The soldiers didn't respond immediately. They just stood there, their weapons at the ready, waiting for the order to move in. Leo's mind raced. He knew they were outmatched. The soldiers were too many, too well trained. But Ja'ar was a force to be reckoned with even in its weakened state. They weren't completely powerless. Ja'ar's wings twitched again, its massive form shifting as it took a step forward. The dragon's glowing eyes locked onto the soldiers, its tail flicking in the air, a warning. Leo's heart pounded as he watched the creature prepare to fight. He knew that if they did this, it would be a battle to the death. The soldier in the front raised his hand, signaling for the others to hold. "You cannot win this fight," the soldier said, his voice cold. "We are not here to negotiate. You will surrender." Leo clenched his fists. He knew it was a losing battle. But he wouldn't give up. Not without a fight. "Ja'ar, we have to try," Leo whispered, his eyes meeting the dragon's. There was a moment of silence, the two of them standing together, understanding each other in that brief shared moment. The connection they had formed was strong, stronger than Leo had ever expected. The soldier's voice cut through the tension. "I'm giving you one last chance to surrender." Leo didn't answer. Instead, he turned his gaze to the warship, then back to the soldiers. They were surrounded. There was nowhere to run, but Ja'ar had other plans. With a sudden roar, the dragon unfurled its wings and leapt into the air, its powerful body soaring toward the soldiers. The force of the dragon's movement sent a shockwave through the ground, throwing dust and debris into the air. Leo stood frozen for a moment, watching in awe as Ja'ar used its telekinetic powers to send a blast of energy toward the soldiers, knocking them off their feet. The soldiers staggered back, their weapons firing wildly into the air, but Ja'ar was too fast. The dragon darted between them, its glowing eyes fierce with determination. Leo's heart raced as he saw the soldiers regroup, trying to aim their weapons at the dragon, but Ja'ar was already gone, moving with speed and grace that Leo hadn't known the creature was capable of. It was as though the dragon had found its strength again, drawing from some deep hidden power that Leo couldn't understand. He had no time to think. As the soldiers struggled to regain control, Leo ran toward the wreckage of the ship. He had to get the ship operational. He couldn't let Ja'ar fight alone. The dragon landed with a heavy thud, sending another shockwave through the ground. Ja'ar turned its attention back to the soldiers, but Leo could see that the creature was weakening. The previous battles had taken their toll, and even now, despite its strength, Ja'ar was running low on energy. But Leo wasn't about to let it end like this. He reached the ship and quickly worked to restore its power. The ship's systems were damaged, but Leo had learned enough about the ship's inner workings to get some of them running again. The engines hummed weakly as he activated the emergency thrusters. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get them off the ground. As the soldiers tried to regroup, Leo jumped into the cockpit of the ship and began to power it up. The ship's systems flickered to life and the engines roared as they began to warm up. Leo's heart skipped a beat. They had a chance. He looked out the cockpit window, watching Ja'ar continue to fight the soldiers. The dragon was struggling, but it wasn't giving up. Ja'ar's tail swiped through the air, knocking soldiers back as they tried to surround it. "Come on," Leo muttered under his breath, his fingers flying over the controls. He had to get the ship working. He had to help Ja'ar. Finally, the ship's engines roared to full power. Leo slammed the throttle forward, and the ship lifted off the ground, the thrusters pushing them into the air. Ja'ar saw the ship rise, and with one final roar, the dragon leapt into the air, soaring alongside the ship as it made its escape. The soldiers fired at them, but the ship was already too far away and Ja'ar was too fast. The dragon swerved in the air, evading the blasts, and followed the ship as it rose higher into the sky. They had done it. They had escaped. As Leo piloted the ship through the stars, he glanced at Ja'ar, who flew beside them, its wings cutting through the air with newfound strength. The dragon's eyes glowed softly, a silent thank you for all that Leo had done. Leo smiled, his heart full of relief. They had survived, together, and in that moment Leo realized that in the end, it wasn't just about escaping the dangers of Korra 3. It was about finding a family in the most unlikely place, a bond between a human and a dragon that would never be broken. The stars stretched out before them, a vast, endless sea of possibilities. The journey wasn't over, but together Leo and Ja'ar would face whatever came next. The massive mechanical giants, with their red glowing eyes and towering forms, marched across the barren moon toward Leo and Ja'ar. The ground trembled under their weight and the air felt thick with danger. Leo's heart pounded in his chest as he watched Jar, who had just managed to get airborne, trying to keep its distance from the incoming attack. The dragon's wings flapped heavily, struggling with the weight of its injuries, but there was no time to waste. The war machines were getting closer, and the fight for survival was about to become even more dangerous. Leo had no choice. He couldn't stand by and let Jar face these monsters alone. The dragon had already saved him once, and now it was his turn to protect the creature who had become so important to him. With his mind racing, Leo grabbed a piece of broken machinery from the wreckage. It wasn't much, but it was the only thing he had to work with. He had to make it count. The war machine in the front of the group aimed its large energy cannon toward Jar, the weapon glowing ominously. Leo didn't have time to think. He rushed to the remains of the ship, trying to create some kind of weapon to stop the attack. He grabbed wires, metal panels, and anything that seemed useful, working as fast as he could. Every second counted. Above him, Jar was circling the war machine, its glowing eyes locked on the enemy. The dragon's movements were slow but deliberate. It wasn't giving up. Leo knew the dragon was still weak, but he could feel the determination coming from it, a silent promise that it wasn't going down without a fight. The war machine fired. A bright beam of energy shot from its cannon, cutting through the air with terrifying speed. Jar dove out of the way just in time, narrowly avoiding the blast. The ground beneath them shook as the beam hit the rocky surface, sending debris flying in every direction. Leo watched in fear, knowing that Jar wouldn't be able to dodge the next shot. The dragon was strong, but it wasn't invincible. Leo had to act. He couldn't let this creature die. Not now, not after everything they had been through together. With a burst of energy, Leo grabbed the piece of machinery he had been working on and ran toward the war machine. His hands shook, but his mind was focused. He had no plan, only a desperate need to do something, to help Jar. The war machine fired again. This time, Jar didn't have enough time to avoid it. The beam of energy struck the dragon's wing, sending it plummeting toward the ground. Leo's stomach dropped as he watched in horror. The dragon hit the ground with a heavy thud, the force of the impact shaking the surface of the moon. For a moment, there was only silence. Leo froze, heart racing. Was it too late? Had the dragon been destroyed? But then Jar stirred. Slowly, its head lifted and its wings flapped weakly. The dragon was alive. It wasn't down for good, Jar, Leo shouted, running toward the fallen dragon. His mind raced. He didn't know how much longer Jar could hold on. He needed to act quickly. The war machines were closing in. Leo could see at least 4 more of them in the distance, moving toward them with terrifying speed. If he didn't do something soon, they were both done for. Leo knelt beside Jar, feeling the heat radiating from the dragon's body. It was warm, alive, but it was weakening. Jar's breathing was slow and labored, its eyes half closed in pain. "Come on, buddy," Leo said, his voice shaky. "You've got to get up." "We're not done yet." Jar's tail twitched slightly and its wings stirred again. There was a spark of life in those eyes, determination despite the pain. Leo could feel it, the silent promise of survival that the dragon was giving him. With a deep breath, Leo stood up. He had to make it count. This was their last chance. The war machines were getting closer. They were almost on top of them. Leo's mind raced, and then, in a moment of clarity, he knew what he had to do. The only chance they had was to stop the machines before they could attack again. If he could just disable one of them, it might give them the time they needed to escape. Leo rushed toward the war machine that had fired on Jar. It was large, towering over him, but Leo didn't have time to be afraid. He ran toward it, climbing over the rocks and debris in his path. His heart beat faster with every step, but there was no turning back now. He reached the war machine's side and began to climb its massive metal legs, using the wreckage of the ship to help him gain height. The machine didn't notice him at first. It was too focused on Jar, who was struggling to get back on its feet. Leo knew he had only one shot. Finally, Leo reached the top of the war machine. He found an opening in its armor, a weak spot where the machine's power core was exposed. Without thinking, he jammed a piece of broken metal into the opening, hoping it would do something. He wasn't sure what would happen, but he had to try. Suddenly, the war machine's entire body shook. Sparks flew from the exposed power core as the machine began to malfunction. A loud screeching noise filled the air as the machine staggered, its movements becoming erratic. Leo could feel the vibrations beneath his feet as the machine struggled to stay upright. Just as Leo pulled himself back to safety, the war machine fell. It crashed to the ground with a massive roar, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. Leo barely had time to react as the dust settled. He quickly turned and ran back to Jar. The dragon was standing now, though its movements were slow. Its wings were still weak, but it was up. And that was enough. Jar turned toward the remaining war machines, which had now stopped advancing. The damage done to the first one seemed to have shaken them. They were hesitating, unsure of what to do next. Leo and Jar stood side by side, watching as the war machines loomed ahead. They weren't out of danger yet, but the fight had changed. The machines had lost their advantage, and now it was their turn to strike back. Jar let out another roar, its voice filled with defiance and power. The sound was like a challenge to the machines, a call to fight. And fight they did. With one final push, Jar launched itself into the air, its wings flapping with all the strength it had left. The remaining war machines fired at it, but Jar was too fast. It dodged and weaved, its glowing body moving like a streak of lightning across the sky. Leo watched in awe as the dragon fought. There was no fear in Jar's eyes now, only strength and the will to survive. It was incredible. With a sudden burst of power, Jar descended on the nearest war machine, its claws tearing through the metal like it was paper. The machine didn't stand a chance. It crumpled under the dragon's attack, its power systems failing as Jar landed gracefully on the ground. Leo couldn't help but smile. They had done it. They had survived. Cliffhanger. But as Leo turned to look at the remaining war machines, he noticed something that made his heart drop. In the distance, another ship had arrived. This one was different, sleek, fast, and unmistakably military. It was coming straight for them. Days passed, and the vast empty moon of Cora 3 remained silent except for the sounds of the wind whispering across the rocky surface. Leo Vargas and the dragon, who he now knew was called Jar, had formed a routine. Leo worked tirelessly on the ship, doing everything he could to repair it. But he knew it would take time. The wreckage was severe, and without proper tools, it was almost impossible to make a full recovery. Still, he couldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. Jar, though still paralyzed, seemed to understand Leo's determination. It had been hard at first for Leo to know what to do for the creature, but over time he began to notice little things. How Jar's eyes followed his movements, how the creature's chest rose and fell in rhythm with the passing days. Leo would sit beside the dragon at night speaking softly to it, though he wasn't sure the dragon understood his words. It felt as if Jar could hear him somehow. It was like they were connected, not just by the physical wounds, but by something deeper. One evening, as the red light of the dying sun bathed the moon in a soft glow, Leo sat down next to Jar once again. The dragon's large, glowing eyes met his, and for a moment, it felt as if they were communicating. The feeling was strange but comforting. Jar's mind seemed to reach out to him not through speech but through emotion, a sense of longing, of frustration, and perhaps gratitude. "Hey, buddy," Leo spoke quietly, trying to sound calm despite the pressure of the situation. "I'm not giving up. You don't have to be alone in this." For a long moment there was silence. Then a faint ripple of emotion brushed across Leo's mind. It was a strange feeling, like a deep sigh of relief, or a moment of peace. It was clear that the dragon was responding, though it didn't speak. Leo's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know how to explain it, but somehow he felt the connection growing stronger. There was something here, something between him and the dragon that couldn't be ignored. Jar wasn't just a beast, and Leo wasn't just a stranded human. They were both lost, both struggling to survive on this desolate moon. And in a strange way, they needed each other. The days turned into weeks. Leo managed to salvage a few parts from the wreckage of the ship, and with each passing day, the ship began to look more like something that could fly again. It wasn't much, but it was something. However, there was still no sign of help. The comms were dead, and Leo had no way of reaching the outside world. Every day, he would climb to the highest point on the rocky hills and search the skies for any sign of a rescue ship. But each time, the horizon remained empty. Jar, though still weak, began to show signs of improvement. The dragon's wings twitched occasionally, and Leo noticed that it could lift its head with more ease. The glow in its eyes seemed brighter, more alert. Leo would work on the ship during the day, then spend hours sitting with Jar at night, talking to it, trying to keep its spirits up. Sometimes Leo would tell Jar stories from his life before the crash, tales of Earth, of his family, of things that had once seemed so far away. He didn't know why he shared those things, but it felt natural. He had no one else to talk to. The silence of the moon pressed against him like a weight, and Jar, though not human, seemed to be the only one who understood. One night, as Leo sat on the ground leaning against the wreckage of the ship, he heard a sound. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, coming from the distance. A low rumble like the sound of something big moving across the ground. Leo stood up quickly, his heart racing. The sound wasn't normal. This wasn't the wind. Something was coming. Jar's head lifted and the dragon's glowing eyes turned to the horizon. Leo could feel the tension in the air. The creature was aware of it. Whatever was approaching wasn't something Leo wanted to face alone. He rushed to the ship's remains, grabbing what tools he could and preparing for anything. The ship wasn't ready to fly yet, but there might be a way to defend themselves if whatever was coming wasn't friendly. He had to be ready. He couldn't let Jar get hurt again, not after everything they had been through. The rumbling grew louder, and soon, Leo could see a shadow in the distance. It wasn't a ship, at least not one he recognized. It was something far worse. A massive, dark figure emerged on the horizon. The ground shook as it approached, and the air around them seemed to grow heavy. Leo's heart dropped into his stomach. The creature that was coming was far more terrifying than anything he could have imagined. The silhouette grew clearer. It was a large, mechanical being, something like a giant, walking machine. It had enormous legs that moved with purpose, and its glowing red eyes scanned the area. It was a war machine, designed for destruction, and it was heading straight toward them. Leo's pulse quickened. There was no way they could outrun it. Jar was still too weak to fly, and Leo had no idea how to fight something like that. Jar stirred beside him, the dragon's large body shifting slightly. It was clear the creature sensed the danger. Leo turned to the dragon, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to get out of here now," Leo shouted, even though he knew Jar couldn't move fast enough. But then, something unexpected happened. Jar's wings, which had been stiff and useless just days before, began to twitch, slowly at first, then with more force. The dragon's eyes began to glow brighter, its body shaking with the effort. Leo watched in shock. Was Jar actually going to fly? The war machine was getting closer, its massive feet pounding the ground. It wasn't going to stop. Leo knew they had only moments to act. He ran to the ship, grabbing anything that could be used to make a weapon. He wasn't going to let that thing get to Jar. Just as the war machine took its first step onto the rocky surface near the crash site, Jar roared. The sound was deep and powerful, echoing across the empty moon. It wasn't just a roar of fear. It was a roar of defiance. To Leo's amazement, Jar's wings unfurled. It was slow, but it was happening. The dragon was lifting off the ground, and with a burst of energy, it soared into the air. Leo's eyes widened in awe as Jar flew, its massive wings cutting through the moon's thin atmosphere. But the war machine wasn't done. It fired a blast of energy straight toward Jar. Leo gasped, rushing to the wreckage to find something, anything to stop it. Jar dodged the blast at the last moment, its wings flapping with power. It was fast, faster than Leo had ever imagined. With a sharp turn, Jar swooped down and landed in front of the war machine, sending a wave of force that shook the ground. The war machine paused, seemingly unsure of how to respond to this unexpected challenge. Leo didn't know how much longer Jar could keep this up, but he knew one thing. This fight wasn't over yet. Cliffhanger. As Leo watched, his mind racing, he realized the war machine wasn't alone. More were coming, more of the same mechanical giants, marching toward them from the horizon. and now they were all focused on Jar.